A very good morning to you. Thank you very much for keeping it KBC Channel 1. You are just in time for Biz Check. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, over the next 2 hours, we shall be having quite some conversations. The first hour, we shall be talking about the place of green energy in Kenya. Just how far are we in the journey towards having 100% green energy by 2030, and we shall be having that conversation with Thuon Njoroge, who is an energy economist and director of policy and research at Africa Utility Forum. In the second hour, we shall be talking about matters small and medium enterprises. Just what is the government doing to support this sector, despite the fact that taxation and the tax environment is quite unfavorable to the small and medium enterprises. All that is coming up within the program. Remember that today is the fourth day of the 2023 Nairobi International Trade Fair, traditionally referred to the ASK shows. It's happening in Nairobi, and the ASK shows are also happening in other counties. Kisumu County is ongoing. Kabarnet in Baringo County is also ongoing. If you're in any of those places, you would want to go in there and learn something about climate smart agriculture, which is the theme of this year's ASK shows. Now, we want to get into that particular conversation about matters energy. Remember that according to experts, by 2030, we want to make sure that we are at 100% renewable energy. Currently, renewable energy sources are generating 80% of Kenya's electricity. What will it take to bridge the 20%? Thuo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Betty.
Karibu sana.
Welcome, viewers.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let's just start there. 80% renewable energy.
Yes.
That is great.
Yes.
What will it take to get to to get the 20% going?
So when you talk of electricity generation, let me begin from maybe that point for clarity and also understanding for the general population.
Right.
We are currently doing 92%. So what that means essentially is that our energy mix, which is what contributes to our grid electricity generation, constitute around 92%. The 7% comes from old and some kind of aged infrastructure, or rather technology, which we refer to as thermal. So I know you've interacted with this, Betty, from time to time, and there has been conversation about the relevance of having the 7%, which is expensive, and also which is somewhat not clean. Yes. So that in that context of generation, then you look at it from that point. In the context of the entire energy spectrum, which includes even that of cooking solutions, because remember, we have two facets, that one of generation and electricity, as well as now the cooking solutions. So that one we're still doing a bit badly. It's around 28%. A good number of our population still are dependent on what we refer to as biomass. What that essentially means is that Wanjiko out there is using wood, is using kerosene to some extent, is using charcoal, is using, those refusals that you may find. Sometimes it could be plant and plant refuse that dry up and they're used for cooking solution. So that one we need to pull up our socks, and I think government in a recognition has put this under in the first lane, and if you could remember, the head of state did put this, and I think that's why the conversation about gas is coming in, and how to lower gas so that we can be able to transit our population, particularly in the clean cooking space, to transit to now clean energy.
Right. How easy will this journey be?
I will still look at that in two facets. First, beginning with electricity. Remember how we engage with energy investors, what we may refer to as IPP. Usually it is in a fashion of putting up and signing power purchase agreements, where Kenya Power gets into contracts with the producers of electricity, and that contract is usually ring-fenced. It has a timeline, it has a schedule, it has a tariff in there that has already been decided between the off-taker, which is Kenya Power and Lighting Company, has been looked into with EPRA, the regulator in the sector, and now together with what we call open book policy, where investors come and say, this technology will cost me this much. Should you agree this is what will be my tariff, so to speak. So that one is and then they look at that. So when can we do away, because that's the question critically, with fossil fuels, which is thermal power. That again will depend on the power purchase agreements. Around 3, we had around 3 have already retired. 1 was retired this year, 2 retired in a span of about 4 years ago. We are left with a number of them, around 8, 7 thereabout. And the horizon is that we are looking at around 2028, 2029 thereabout. So if we are to retire early, if we are to retire this technology, what that means then it will be one way parties can come together and decide to renegotiate and say, price has become a critical element in our electricity generation. Price has become a critical element in our ease of doing business. Manufacturing, for instance, remember, we've got a lean manufacturing sector in the region of about 4,500. You can imagine, Betty, this country is doing that region. So, and if you look at, and this is a study that was done by KEPSA, and I think also subsequently by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, one of the impediments that to go into manufacturing space, or rather what has hindered the manufacturers to get into Kenyan space, one element has been electricity, the cost of electricity. So in trying to address this issue and understand, maybe you could sit together, that government can sit together with the IPPs and decide maybe to terminate that way. What should be critical, or rather should be noted here, is that this kind of exercise should not be coercive, it should not be combative, because when you do that, you send two signals. Number one, you erode what we refer to as investors' confidence, in the sense that a paper just becomes a paper. An agreement is not an agreement. A paper just becomes a paper. And one day, one regime can come up and begin to say, we are doing away with this kind of technology.
Right.
That's a paper. But if really you are going to look at the sanctity of an agreement that was entered by government together with the investors, then you have to be very religious in terms of observing those parameters, and ensure that you do not coerce, because we don't want to send a signal to the community. Remember, we are one among the international community. So we don't want to send a situation whereby you say that we renege, you are a country that reneges on our contractual obligation.
Right, so you want to remain trustworthy,
Yes, you want to remain trustworthy, but again, remember, these are emerging issues,
right.
Issues of cost. Electricity now has become 100 times cheaper than it was 10 years ago. The technologies that we're embracing, and I'm glad that you're talking about renewable energy, solar and wind, it is now 150 to 200 times cheaper to be able to harness electricity from those green technologies. So where does that put the older technology? Where does that put the contractual obligation that you get into? An intricate balancing, of course, needs to come into play. Sometimes you can call people. I can come. There is nothing that bars me and you to come into the table. Should there be some teething issues? Should there be some issues that really looks to warrant their interest? But I will say that is easy to me. That is easy because a number of these power plant that you're talking about have already recouped the investment costs.
Right.
So 8 years is just like what you may call in a layman's pocket change, you know. So so clearly, even from the perspective, investors' perspective, you've taken care of their concerns, which is if they had borrowed money to put up those technologies, then you've taken care of those, because already they have repaid if they had gotten into some kind of arrangement with financial institutions.
Right.
So what to me is critical, and this has happened into this country for the longest time, is the issue of rent seeking. Because the reason why, and you remember there has been task force one after the other after the other. I happened to appear before the previous regime, the task force that was put in place by the previous regime, the presidential task force on electric power purchase agreement and review and renegotiate on and something like that. And what clearly comes out here, when we engaged with members of the task force, is the issue of rent seeking. People are holding to their interest dearly, you know. So how now you deal with that, I don't know. Every regime, I think, has an envelope of how they're doing. We are looking forward to, I'm hopeful, because I know the head of state is very clear about the issues of cost, number one, of electricity. Number two, the issue of having a clean energy ecosystem. Let me touch slightly on the clean cooking, because we are looking at that. It will take some good time. I'm optimistic also. I don't know. I don't want to prescribe and say that time frame is going to be 3 years, 4 years, or something like that. But it will take some time, because we will need to address the issue of culture. Our people still use biomass because of culture. If you go today, Betty, in Nyamakema, or maybe in a good butcher that you know of, how likely is you to take nyama choma that is made by gas?
Sorry?
How likely is you to take nyama choma that is prepared by gas? Highly unlikely. Our people know githeri as good.
Okay, just allow me to interrupt you a little bit. We need to fix a technical issue. We will take a quick break right here. When we come back, this conversation continues. Do stay with us. Thank you for watching KBC Channel 1. You are watching BizCheck, and we are having a conversation about green energy, the journey towards 100% renewable energy by 2030. In studio, Suo Njoroge, an energy economist and director of policy and research at Africa Utility Forum, is with me. Suo, before we took that break, you were talking to us about cooking, clean cooking. Please go ahead.
So yes, and we were saying that the transition may take some time because of a number of imperatives, which is, number one, we are African in nature, and as being Africans, there is the way we know, there is the way we prepare our meals, there is the way we prepare our food.
Yes. And
I was giving you example of nyama choma, or maybe an example back home of what we call as githeri. A people pay high premium to githeri that is prepared by charcoal.
Or kuni.
Or kuni.
Yes.
And to even a greater extent, a pot made, So when you come with pressure cooker, there has been, that's not an original, I think that's a Nairobi githeri. Similarly, nyama choma is prepared better. I mean, people will pay high premium to nyama choma that is prepared on charcoal or kuni as well. So we will need to work on, or rather architecture, the issue of culture and mindset of our population. But it is not a hard thing to do, because now we have an imperative. We have a requirement to transit to what we refer to as a low carbon economy, which is we are no longer going to use fossil fuels or fuels that are dirty in nature. That problem, that inherent problem of cooking, having dirty cooking solution, is not only unique to Kenya. Globally, fundamental energy, primary energy use globally now is still in the regions of about 87%. And this one is as published by the International Energy Agency. So it's a problem that is globally shared. But again, even in as much as it is globally shared, we will need to have local solutions, because it is the local people that we are responding to. So how we do that, how we architecture mindset, how we make our people understand that dirty fossil fuels or dirty energy use are hazardous and impact negatively on our health issues. Yes.
And when you talk about coming up with local solutions, of course, for manufacturers to get into that industry, there have to be some incentives.
Yes.
Are there some right now?
Yes. There are what I may call intermittent energy technologies. Okay. You've seen some GCOs come that they refer to as smart GCOs. Others, smart GCOs. So that is a transition by itself. So you could imagine if you are using wood and how toxic wood used to be. You remember, even from our traditional aspect, we would have our kitchen set outside there because of that nature. Because, you know, house will be so smoky and something like that. Then we eventually transited to a bit more efficient cooking solutions, which is charcoal, not so much dirty and not so much smoky. Then we transited into now briquettes and something like that. So it's something that we've been doing over time. What I will maybe intimate in respect to now the entire thematic issue about energy transition and the world going to net zero carbon, low carbon economy, is do not hasten the people. Policy makers ought to look at local solutions. Let's look at what will work for us, how we are going to transit. So what that means is we should not have a roadmap that is time framed, for instance, and you say maybe Kenya should have this. You cannot prescribe that. That time frame will depend on the number of issues that we've discussed and how now fast you navigate and transit into those issues.
Of course, the president is looking to ensure that 15 billion trees are planted within the next 5 years. That is very ambitious. But at the same time, these let's call it dirty cooking is undoing that particular dream, so to say, right? Yeah. So what are your thoughts in terms of, you know, ensuring that we are saving the environment in this light?
Tree planting, the 15 billion, I think they're calling it 30 by 30 by 30 or something like that. Okay. It's a 30 million by 2030. Is an encouraging initiative and an encouraging endeavor. Of course, that one, if you look at now decarbonizing the entire economy, you're looking at very many facets. You're looking at planting tree, we are looking at reducing electricity use and primary use of dirty fuels, all those aspects. So what government is doing here in respect particularly to now the use of planting trees is to attack that from that angle. Equally doing every other thing, like we've said now, and I don't know where that puts our traditionally oil producing. You remember we had some discoveries made in Turkana and something like that. And it looks like, if you look at the demeanor and the behavior of government, it looks like, and that is me, it looks like oil is not one of the tables, it's not among the candidates being considered, or rather not very immediate, you know, because of course oil again is a fossil fuel, whatever. But you could see a lot of concerted effort around clean energy, around geothermal, around EVs. Remember our transport, in as much as we have so little in terms of our entire contribution of emissions as Africa. Around in the region of about 3% on energy, but holistically around 12%. 10% in sub-Saharan country, that is minus South Africa. Consider we are still doing, our contributions are so low, so low. Right. But despite that then, government is still, if you look at your own country and you want to cascade, transport significantly contributes to the emissions. And that is why I think if you look at how policy's direction is going, a lot of our motorization in the near future will transit.
The African Energy Chamber, NJIUC, I think you know.
Yes.
Yeah, he was saying that Africa should be allowed to industrialize. You know, he was saying that it's almost unfair that when Africa is now coming of age, the world wants to phase out the fossil fuels.
Yes.
What direction do you think that the options that are there are enough for Africa to reach its potential?
Thank you so much, and I expected that question so much. I was actually praying that you may ask that. Could
Yeah,
be able
it is.
to tell and to have this. I call this entire energy transition conversation democratizing it. What that means, and I pray this gets and sinks into our policymakers, is that can we ensure that we democratize, or rather we ensure that the energy transition is meaningful to the people there down, in terms of improving their standard of living, which is what you've just said about the global north has advanced, high level class, state of the art. Then you come to the global south, there are those that are in the middle income. Then come to Africa now, well, of course we belong to the global south, but of course if you look at the cadres, we are a bit lower, because you will classify us, or rather a majority of the African countries, as developing countries, which means what? That even their primary energy fundamentals have not yet been achieved, which is in the region of access, for instance, to electricity. Away from Kenya, if you look at African continent, largely, we have not accessed significantly, our people, or the population has not accessed electricity to some aspect. Even in cooking solutions, we're still doing poorly. So, and that put the conversation. How then are we gonna transit and still be able to ensure that we sustain economic development? That is the thing. And that question squarely now puts, if you look at it from that angle, then that is what is going to inform the pathway, how we are going to go. So mine is critical that no one should come from wherever place, from whichever planet, from whichever kind of the corner of the world, to tell us that this is the way you are going to transit, or rather, this is the pathway that you are going to adopt. Our pathways are going to be dictated by the fundamentals that we have right now. Okay, which is we still have low access to electricity, low access to clean energy. Our people still have grappling with issues of unemployment. And like you rightly said, Betty, we know if you largely increase the manufacturing sector and the industrial sector, you've largely dealt with the question of unemployment significantly. Developed world, this is what they went through. And so on and so forth. So mine is that let's ensure that our pathways are Afrocentric, so to speak. They are Kenyan-based. They resonate with Wanjiko down there. That is what I call democratizing the solutions and the pathway towards energy transition. Very important.
There is a concern that with the West looking to ban fossil fuel powered vehicles by 2030, 2035, like the UK.
Yes.
There's a concern that there will be a major dump in Africa, of those vehicles. And Africa is also trying to move to electric vehicles. How will we achieve a balance here?
I understand that squarely. There is what now that has come out to be known as the Euro 7, which is what you're talking about, Betty. Having to achieve, and what Euro 7 basically means is that no motor vehicle industry in the world will be able to generate what we are calling IC technology, which is internal combustion. It's the traditional fuel generated, diesel generated. We call them IC. No company will be required to generate IC technology by 2030. None. And from that aspect alone, that means we are left, because how many Kenyan companies do you know that produce and manufacture cars, and at least at mass scale. We are not doing. We are doing still poorly. There is Mobis. It's a good technology. It is showing sign. But is Mobis in South Africa? Is Mobis in Congo? Is Mobis in Niger? Is Mobis? Are you going to find that in this? The issue of scale is still a question. But of course, we are transiting. We will be somewhere. Even India did that. You remember the Mahindra, which used to be some time. Now it's a powerful car, very efficient vehicle, and it is there. So we'll eventually be there. The issue here is we are gonna, this is an imperative that we cannot run away from, because a number of our people, we are markets to those ecosystem that you're talking about, UK and something. And in fact, if you look at China, which has played a very critical and fundamental role in terms of ensuring that we have standardization, or rather mass scale. China has said theirs is actually even more ambitious. It puts that number to 2028, not 2030 like it is. So if China, which produces mass production globally, has done that, then you can actually tell that seriously we are going to transit. This is an imperative that whose time has come. Yeah. But addressing the question about dumping, because you mentioned about that, we have a climate change act that has just been, and I think it's going through the general public, I think through county or something like that, to be able to marshal some and get contributions from the public through the popular known system and sequence of events that we know of, public participation. That clearly puts, so domestic laws, domestic guidelines and regulations can be able to deal with that issue and ensure that, you know what, Kenya is not going to become a dump area. So it is, the onus is on us. The onus is on the policymakers there to ensure that we are not going to become a dumping area for IC or for any gadgets and equipment facilities that are usually diesel or rather dirty-driven, energy-driven technologies. Yes.
So as we speak now, the government is trying to, incentivize the uptake of electric vehicles.
Yes.
Do you see this working?
Yes, that is working. I can bet on that. If I had $1 million, I would place it on a bet in that. And why is that, Betty? Number one, when we were off the show, I talked to you about the economic incentives. People, or rather the population, respond to what we call economic incentives. Right now, there is what we call the time of use tariff that has already been put in place. And I want to commend IPRA for that foresight, to be able to see that this is a technology that has come, and this is a technology that whose time has come. We have to deal with it. We have to ensure that the industry transits. What IPRA did is to gazette those tariffs. You can imagine today, if Betty, you got your Vogue, your Touareg, your Mercedes, that is EV generated, or rather EV driven. By you getting an IV calibrated, a meter that is calibrated to charge, IV calibrated charging infrastructure, you'll be able to enjoy 1 unit of power to your car at 16 shillings during the day and 8 shillings during the night. That is what we refer to as time of use tariff. Sometimes in electricity and even in commodity market, we may want to induce what we call discriminatory pricing with a view to maybe encourage people to move, now in this case to encourage people to transit to that area. And here the drive, and that is one aspect. The other aspect is this charging infrastructure are going to be domiciled in household where you stay. If it is an apartment, then they are going to have a designated infrastructure points where people who have and own cars in this apartment are able to charge them. So the other secondary ones, the ones that, like you've heard a conversation by government say, in every 25 kilometer, we are going to have a charging spot. That will become a secondary infrastructure. So that to ensure that you have a smooth mobility. Should you live from here to Samburu, from Marana, from Marsabit or something like that, then at least you know your issue of car and the charging of your car is dealt with. So that transition is going to be, I give this country 3 years. By 2025, Betty, a lot of our motorizations, a lot of what we acquire every year, if you look at NTSA, we get in the region of about 400,000 vehicles every year. A lot of that number going forward are going to be EV-generated vehicles, EV-driven vehicles. Yes.
And what is the tax environment looking for that sector?
By the way, and thank you again, because I think I had forgotten that, government has put incentive, and not only in EV infrastructure, but in anything that is clean generated, including off-grid. People want to put solar and standalone that is solar generated. Those things come in the 2023 Financial Act. Those aspects that facilitate, or rather accessories that facilitate energy transition have been zero rated. So again, the issue of responding to economic incentive here comes into play. And we see our people coming, navigating towards that. There has been a question, and that's a perception issue from the market, that, you know what, people have been saying, the general population has been saying that EV-driven vehicles are not as powerful, durable as IC-driven cars. That is not right. If you look at Australia today, Betty, and even US, and even Canada, a lot of prime movers, you know that a prime mover carries containers and those very heavy So those ones, a lot of those ones are now EV generated. Look at what Elon Musk is producing right now. Ship to the dock, a lot of those mobility infrastructure are now EV driven. So the question about durability, performance does not arise at all. The only issue that has been there is the issue of battery and the issue of durability of what we refer to as endurance of your car. Should you charge? What is the endurance? Or rather, the degree to which, the period through which you will go with the charge in which you've charged. That has been an issue. Because sometimes some experts argue that time is too short. If you look at borders like we know them, motorcycles, they're going in their region. So when you swipe, that charge can take you in a region of about 80 kilometers, depending on the load. If you subject it to more loader, then that durability reduces. But there is hope. Why hope? Because a lot of, if you look at the trajectory in the industry, in the area of technological advancement, the horizon is very promising. Right now, researchers in the lab are working around coming up with a battery storage system that can even last a week. Can you imagine? And if you look at our phones, let me give you an analogy of our phones. Remember when we just had our smartphone? So you will buy a phone, and there are some phones that will bulge. So the battery has done something, and they will bulge, like bursting. Others, there are those others that had those challenges of bursting, challenges of overheating, challenges of those nature. We no longer have those challenges any longer. Another one, we used to charge, you remember, we will charge like for even an hour. You subject your phone to a charge on a plug for an hour. Nowadays, they have come up with what you call charge faster, then supercharge, then supercharge. We can now be able, when I want to replenish my phone on charge, I can be able to do that when it was like 2%, I can be able to do that comfortably in 5 minutes. So the technology is there and is very promising, and it is going. That's an issue that is there, and like any industry, we are navigating. It is a transition, it's a process. Yes.
The way the world is now moving towards electric vehicles.
Yes.
Is it time that Africa, if we can't do this as countries, why can't Africa come together to, manufacture electric vehicles for the African market?
Yes. And that is the very reason. Let me tell you, the World Trade Organization infrastructure have been very, very unfair. not only in electricity, not only in energy, but even in the commodity market. You know, these countries, if you look at, so you want to sell, for instance, our African produce, which is agricultural based, for instance, they will give you, and you want to sell them in advanced economy, they will give you what they call quotas. They tell you, Betty, okay, you want to begin to sell coffee to us, you will sell it, but you can only sell to us 10 units or 1,000 units per year. But they have a latitude to be able to sell everything that we want you know, without ceilings. Yes, as long as the market demands, they are able to tell. Those are an unfair trade organization. And if you look, trade system, if you look at the conversation that the head of state passionately has driven, it's purely around that, not only the financial infrastructure and the architecturing of financial, it's purely even about the arrangement and the playing level field that African people require. And that brings the question now of, do you know what, Africans? If there is a time that we need to be together, to work together, to speak in one voice, to adopt one common position, then that time is now. I mean, we would have done it yesterday, but of course, I have my views on why it was not done sometimes ago, and why it has become very difficult. But the whole thing is, if there is a time that we need to speak as a bloc, as a one people, then that time is now. And I want to laud the African Union. Why? Because the African Union, in 2021, I think, they ratified what they call the Africa Continental Trade-Free Area. You remember the arrangement? Yes, to ensure that we are able to sell within ourselves, quota-free. We ensure that we are going to advance mobility of our people. So if Betty, you want to go to Ghana today or South Africa, there shouldn't be issues of visas and all these kinds of barriers and every other thing. You should transit anyway. You know, those are Africans, they are our brothers and something like that. So the thing is, let's work on issues that create barrier. What inform those barriers, we work on them and be able to rectify. If you look, Kenya is giving a very good direction, and I could say we are ahead of the curve in that area. The head of state has time and again made pronouncement about this country opening its border to any other African person. You don't require. That statement is in public domain. We want to believe our brothers, our member states in the African Union, in the East African Union, in the SADC, in the ECOWAS, all kind of economic bloc and economic arrangement are going to reciprocate this, are going to look at this from the same script that the head of state is looking into. And why it's that? Because it's beneficial. The bigger picture about opening borders and ensuring that trade increases significantly is all about increasing our trade volumes. Yes. Increasing our trade volumes.
There's a time they were saying that in the Silicon Valley, there are very many Africans there who are coming up with great products.
Yes.
That is, in itself, it's brain drain.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So the brains are here, you know, to do all these amazing things.
Yes. Yes.
The raw materials are also here in Africa. What is stopping us?
I think some kind of policy here and there, some kind of what I may call imperialism, and I'm going to explain shortly about that. But equally, you can see that we have everything that we require. So if you look at our market, and of course where we are as African, the position, where are we? We are developing world. Who is able to pay, for instance, if you look at labor market, Betty, in advanced economies like Canada, like UK, like Scandinavian countries, look at those labor market. How much are they paying? You know, if you transited today and you went to CNN and CGU, Al Jazeera and those other advanced media houses, you will find that the least you could get is about 5 million, you know? Why? Because those economies are able to pay. Their labor market is totally different. The fundamentals of labor market in advanced economies are totally very different than ours. We cannot be able to pay those ones. And of course, inherently, and imperatively, our people respond economically economic incentives, or rather economic carrots, or rather, so you will want, why doctors are leaving nurses is that I am getting there rationally, so I will move there and get more money. That is a rational behavior. But I think we can be able to deal with that with the issues of our resources, like you said. We have resources. Today, Africa has uranium that powers nuclear power plants. You know, a lot of all these coup d'etats that we're experiencing in the Western economy, in the West African economy,
yeah,
are driven from that. There is a kind of awakening. I cannot explain how that awakening now. I do not know. But what I know is that there is a kind of awakening that has, from nowhere, engulfed these guys. And they have known that, hey, you know what? We don't need French any longer, who comes here, steals our uranium, and takes to French to power their nuclear power plant, and have 100% of their population well-lit, well-accessed, and with clean energy solution. Yet for us, we do not. We don't want that. If you look at what is driving those, it's not quest for power. No, no, no. It's an economic imperative. It's an issue of how does one take this at this price, at this much, and take it. You know, that is the economic imperialism that I'm talking about. It's the new form of imperialism. And even as we adopt the issue of carbon credit and also energy transition broadly, those are the things, Betty, that we will need to sit and say that even as we look to architecture and to have this market about carbon credit, how much is our carbon going to be? We must ensure that our people are there to determine, not somebody else, to determine what that price is.
Those are very powerful words and very encouraging. I mean, it's good that these conversations are happening in Africa.
Yeah.
Now, back to the issue of renewable energy. Solar power, wind power, we are yet to fully exploit their potential, despite the fact that geographically we are positioned in a prime, we are in a prime position to, you know, produce solar energy. Why are we not exploiting them fully? Yes,
I will tell you from an economic point of view. So in economics, we know that there is this thing that we call demand and supply. Forces of invisible hands, demand and supply. That force informs how much of power we can uptake. Why is that? Because again, if you go and uptake, or rather generate more power than what we need, that cost of generating more power than what we need still comes back to your bills. So we want to match the demand and supply of our electricity to be, and again, be able still to ensure that that price of electricity is reliable, is cost effective, is clean, like we said, is sustainable. Because remember, our population still have some significant kind of income. So there is the way you can require, or rather requisite, we call it, you make a requisition to generate more power, more that is going to affect, that will make the prices of this electricity very high, that our people are not going to uptake, or rather to take, because of issues of prices again. So the thing here is that we want to ensure, but then you want to look also, what are the demands? Like I didn't mention to you earlier, still on this conversation, we said the number of manufacturing industry, heavy, up to I think light industry, not so much light, heavy, there are some, KPLC categorizes industrial levels depending on the nature, depending on their consumption of electricity. The number of those farms that are in that space are in the region of about 5,000 below. That is so low for a country that is looking to drive manufacturing. We need to do more, ensure more policies towards, you know, we bring more uptake of manufacturing and industry so that they can be able to drive, you know. And those are the key things. Those are the key people, or rather the key, what you may call anchor demand, if you may say, in issues of uptake of power. So if you look at a company like Mabati Rolling Mills, those ones a single farm can do an electricity consumption of about even 10 megawatts alone. You know how much Nyeri consumes, the entire Nyeri? Is less than 67 megawatts. We are saying Mobati rolling mills, sijui Bamburi cement, sijui East African breweries, although for them I think they have adopted clean cooking, whatever. Those ones, 3 of them can be able to power an entire district. Eldoret, as you see, Eldoret, like you know it, is less than 50 megawatts. It's a city. I think there is a concerted effort to ensure that that place become a city. What we are trying to say here is, in as much as we have building, very well lit, very well big, whatever, the issue about energy uptake is about industrializations. Those industries are not available in Kenya. And we need to do more to ensure that we have more and more and more of manufacturing and industrial plants in the country, so that they inform more uptake, and therefore they will be able to take. Like you said, geothermal, for instance, our current potential is around 12,000 megawatts. Some studies have said, like World Bank, I think, that we are in the region of 10,000 megawatts. We are still grappling at around 3,000 megawatts. So you can see we have a playing level free. We still have a lot of space to play about. If you look at wind and solar in Kenya, and I want to refer to this to a study by Solar, it's called Solar and Wind Energy Resource Assessment. They put that region to around 8,000 megawatts. We are still doing solar 40. In Garissa, I only know of one solar power plant, I think. The others are not commissioned as yet. Wind, we are still doing 310. We only have 2 wind power projects. The Lake Turkana wind power project that does 310. Kipeto, that does, I think, 100 and something. We are still doing in the low region. But that basically is dependent again so significantly on our demand, which is what we've explained.
Right. So as we look to the future, will we achieve that 100% transition? Yes,
we will. I am looking at what government has put in place and how the behavior of government in a way of going clean. I am also looking at a time when the energy transition conversation has come globally. So countries have said we must ensure we reduce our obligation. If you look at what we call a compact, our national determined contribution, which Kenya has ratified, we are saying that that arrangement, that facility, that infrastructure spells out that we have to reduce carbon, greenhouse gases by 45% by 2030. It looks ambitious, eh? I think so. But again, we will try and see how we go. And 100% net zero. Net zero means that whatever you are emitting is absorbed. Whatever you emit is absorbed through various ways. Through aspects such as carbon neutral. You ensure that you have technologies that absorb carbon. A lot of that space, we have that one in soils, we have that in agricultural sector, we have done in manufacturing. There's a way you can arrest carbon and be able to sink it into the soils. And that's why the conversation about tree also comes in, because tree absorbs. For, I think, photosynthesis, if I'm not very wrong, it absorbs carbon to be able to conduct that kind of whatever. So we are okay. In that aspect, we're okay. I am worried about our clean cooking space and how we go about that. But I think given the intermittent technologies that have and stages that have taken place in that area, to me, the greatest hindrance in that space is the issue of cost, because people are asking, I get charcoal for 50, a small container. Gas is expensive still. So I think also there is the way industry needs to come into play to be able to ensure, how do we ensure that somebody can be able to replenish gas of this content and pay this content? Industry has to deal with that question.
Right.
Yes.
So that you have enough gas for maybe a meal or two.
Yes.
Right.
Because that's the income that our people are getting. Yeah.
Wow. That is, of course, there are very many steps that have to be taken for us to get there.
Yes.
Right. So maybe in a minute or two, I'll give you time to give us your closing remarks as we close the conversation.
Thank you, Betty. First, I want to thank you for having me here once more. The other aspect is that I am very optimistic of the horizon, the future of not only Kenya. We are better with this journey began like 20 years ago when the former head of state by the name of Mwai Kibaki sometimes actualized a lot of uptake of electricity and ensuring that our people were connected to the grid. That was again enhanced by the former head of state who equally accelerated that endeavor to the regions of about 7 million now connectivity. Again, that this head of state is passionate about green and clean and environment. That again, I see a serious uptake towards that. So mine is to, my only worry is one, about pathways through which African countries are gonna take. That pathway to me should not be prescriptive, in the sense that should not come from West, where it should come from how our context, our market context look like, and what is it that we can be able to change in our market context, whether that is culture, whether that is price, whether that is policy, whatever that is. Let the drive and the pathway to the pathway be driven by our people.
Be driven by our people. Solutions for the local people.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Betty.
Awesome. I have been speaking with Thuo Njoroge Daniel. He's an energy economist and a director of policy and research at Africa Utility Forum. We have talked a lot about Kenya's journey towards 100% renewable energy. Where is solar and where is wind power, and why about 9,000 megawatts potential of geothermal energy has yet to be exploited. Thank you very much, Thuo Njoroge, for that. We want to take a quick break. When we come back, we shall be having the conversation about small and medium enterprises, their position in Kenya's economy, and what needs to be done to ensure that the SME sector thrives. Do stay with Channel 1.